I'm going to be giving this PSD to everyone who likes this video and leaves a nice comment down below in the comment section. So make sure you like the video and leave a comment down below and I'll send the PSD to you. So in this video, I'm going to show you how I would take line art like this and use a grayscale painting method to make it look like this, and then take that grayscale image and put some colors onto it and then make it look like my final renders that I do when I color images like this. So make sure you stick around to the end of this video to see exactly how I do this, and just follow up on this technique because I think it's a technique that everyone can adapt and pretty much use for their own benefit in their own images. So for this image, which was drawn by Hisham Hapchi, he had already gone around and created a silhouette of the character. So what I did here is just to make the background gray, and then I just made the silhouette a little bit darker so you can see the shapes and shadows I'm going to be creating, and it will be a little bit close to the background. So first thing I'd like to do when I'm using this technique is to just simplify out the shapes that I'm doing with my cuts, and then I start out by just working around the rim light. So what I'm doing right now is I'm using white and I'm just clipping it onto the silhouette that I had of the character. So it's on a separate layer and I'm just using white to just paint in the rim light. So first things I do is just think about where the rim light source is for this character, and then I just paint that in. So next I have a black layer underneath that, and that layer is set to probably 30% opacity, and what I'm going to do on that layer is just to select the key light source for where the light is hitting the character, and I'm using a light source from the right hand side. So all I'm doing right now is just using the polygonal lasso tool to pretty much create shapes of where I want the light to hit, and then I just use the delete key or Ctrl X to cut out those shapes. So what I'm doing is just cutting out from the black that I already had. So technically it's like a cutout technique for that I use when I'm doing this grayscale style. It's something I used to do before when I started out trying to figure out the technique that I'm using right now. I was always doing this. I was always using this grayscale technique, but gradually as I kind of got into the habit of doing it all the time and understanding how colors and saturation works, I pretty much just got around to just using plain colors and starting in color. But everyone that kind of is doing characters and wants to have a really good grasp of maybe their values and just simplifying their process to maybe make it faster, I think you can use this grayscale to color style. It will still help you, especially if you have a lot of characters to render and you just want to nail your values first. So this is a really quick and easy technique you can use as well. As you can see right now, I'm really keeping the shapes really angular and I'm using a lot of triangles because I want the shapes and the design of the light sources to be really angular and have this really planar 3D mesh look to it. Sorry about that. So when I take off the line art, you actually see what I'm talking about, because for Hisham, he has really strong lines for his drawing, but as you can see right now, when I take it off, you can see that it's looking really like a 3D model with low poly. So that's the kind of look I usually like to go for when I'm doing characters like this. And if not that it's Hisham's line art, I would have just taken the line art off and just worked with the 3D poly looking character concept. But usually whenever I'm working with his line arts, I like to leave his line arts for the sheer aesthetics that he has with his drawing, and there's a lot of movement and just really a lot of shapes that he has going with his line art. It's just really beautiful to look at. But yeah, you just want to have this really three-dimensional this 3D low poly look to your image. So make sure you just keep that in mind, and if you don't know how to do this, you can always pull up a reference of what a 3D mesh, 3D poly, low poly model will look like, and then you can pretty much replicate the shapes you're seeing on the model onto your own character. Now, right now, what I like to do is to create another layer above the black I had before, and then that layer is going to be on 100% or 80%, and then I just pretty much brush in all the ambient occlusions where light is not hitting, like where her hood is, under her sleeves, the sword, and just other places. The next thing I like to do is just to go around and figure the colors that I'm going to use for the image, and I'll start to use, I just create a new layer and put it on multiply, and pretty much just paint in where each element of the character is going to be. So skin, clothes, hair, and other design elements of the character are going to be on separate layers, and then I'm going to set those layers on multiply, but these layers are going to be above the grayscale layer. So everything you've done on grayscale can be underneath, and then you create your layer for color up above. But this method might be a little bit confusing because all your flat colors, your flat layers, everything is just going to be on multiply, and might even get confusing later on when you're trying to pretty much separate everything. So what I like to do is I'll just separate the character, the flats, I'll leave everything on normal, then I'll take the grayscale layer, all the layers I've created for grayscale, I'll put them in a group, and then I'll make that group I'll make the blending mode, the layer mode for that group to be on multiply. So that's what I'm doing right now. As you can see, I've separated all the layers, and then I set those layers back to all the flat layers, I set them back to normal. Then the group where I have the grayscale is, I just put it above where my flat color layers are, and then I set the entire group on multiply. So what that does is it just makes that whole grayscale layer, it makes it transparent, so everything you're doing underneath with your colors are just going to show through like it would if you were doing it the opposite way when I was telling you to try out at the beginning. But this is way better. I'm more comfortable with using this technique with the grayscale layer above. Now, as you can see, while I'm applying my colors, all the details from the grayscale as you can see, all the details from the grayscale layer that I was doing before, all of them can show through on the flat colors right now, and it's already reading. You can see some detail in the forms, but what I want to do right now is just to emphasize the darks of the image and just pretty much really bring it to a solid finish. It's okay like this. You can actually submit this for maybe just design or color, but I would really much like to pretty much take the image to kind of like a final solid look. You can put for maybe a cover or like an illustration on a website or any other gaming platform. So right now what I'm doing is just thinking about design elements with the color, and I'm using like a harmonious color scheme and a little bit of contrasting colors with the red on her shoulder because it's surrounded by blues and greens, and then I'm using yellow as accent color for the laces of her shoes, some patterns on her shoes, on her pants, on the hoodie that she's wearing, the sleeves, and then a little bit of that around the red emblem on her shoulder, and then I have the blues and greens on the hood itself. So first things I like to do to pretty much start working with my lights is just nail the color I want to use for the rim lights. And for this image I was just thinking of either using a blue or purple, but I went with the purple and I just set it on linear dodge. This is basically what I showed you guys yesterday. I'm just doing it today. So I set it on linear dot, then I created a layer underneath that, and I set that to multiply, then chose a light blue color, and then I filled that in. So this is what that's the color I'm going with for my ambience, and then I'm going to start rendering a little bit of the highlights that are going to pretty much make the character look solid than just those other flat colors that I had before. So as you can see, whenever you take your character from grayscale to color, you don't just leave it that way. You might want to add some more highlights, unless your turnaround time is fast and they just want to see the designs, then you can send it like that. But when you convert it to color, you would want to just add some more highlights and just pretty much make some more places a little bit darker for your shadows. So right now I'm just following my initial shape design, which is to have a lot of triangles in the image, and as I'm using these triangles, I'm just thinking of the movement that the shape is making, how the planes are moving towards a certain direction. So if Hisham is drawing an arm and his lines are bending towards the right, I'll make sure that my shapes that I'm creating for the shadows and colors are also bending towards the right, so everything will just flow together. And he has good angular and sharp lines in his drawings, so this technique really makes his line art pop and just make it flow. So if his line art had a lot of curves and is more fluid and flowy, I wouldn't use this triangular technique on it. Rather, I'll go with more curves for the shape design. But for this one, I'm just using a lot of angles. Now what I like to do is just emphasize that rim light. I'm seeing that it's not shining that much, so I'm trying to maybe use an overlay layer to bring it up, but I'm not sure if it's going to work. So what I like to do is just use the linear dodge layer, then choose maybe a brighter color, and then brush over the parts I want to be brighter than the other areas. Then the last thing I'll do for this is to create another layer and put it on either normal or multiply, and then I'll use a darker color to just go over the areas that I want to have extra values for, like underneath where underneath the what's it called, that thing that's around her shoes, and just a little bit below her butt, and just some areas that I should have seen when I was doing the first levels over the grayscale, but you can't see all of them. So later on, as you're finishing the image, it will be wise to just go back and pretty much just render the image properly so it will read from far. So basically what you're doing is just making some areas darker, and you use another layer later on to just make some areas brighter. I think this has to do with a lot of intuition. You have to use your intuition to kind of see the areas that are reading, and the planes that are not conveying that information of being three-dimensional, and you just render them to look more 3D and feel like they're actually existing in space. So I think you want to do a lot of studies of just pretty much how objects just sit in space and what parts are hit by light and how they react with the other areas that are in shadow and how those react, and then just kind of understand the values of each of these different planes, how they will turn from the light source, and then just study that and translate that into your work. Now what I'm doing is just creating some dirt on her pants and on her arm, and I'm just using a normal layer, then erasing some sides that I don't want to show. So I want to have some dirt on her pants, but I don't want it to be too much, just a little bit. And then last thing I'll do is just maybe create a little helmet, like a visor over her face, and I'm just using blue for continuity with the other colors that are there in her hoodie. So there's greens there's blues, and this one is also a little bit blue and a little bit purple. Now for this image, this time I am just doing the background last because I wanted to be able to kind of see the values I was working it first before just painting in the background and having to render everything. So that's pretty much how I'll go about applying a grayscale technique and working it to get it to finish with like a color, to a final color stage. And you have to think of how much saturation you want to bring into certain parts of the image, because when you're working with grayscale, you're definitely going to get a lot of muddy looking colors. So when you're pretty much done with the image, you have to just check your skin tones and other places you would want to see some saturation in, and then just go over them with an overlay layer or a soft light layer and just increase the saturation and vibrance of color in some of those places. So that's also what I did here. I just went over her skin and over certain areas in her image just to pretty much bring them up and make them vibrant. I'd love to give a special shout out to my Patreon supporters. Thank you for letting me do what I do. And if you love to support my work and my channel, you could go down and click the link in the description to subscribe to my Patreon page. And with all that being said, I will see you in the next video. Peace.